5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition, liftoff, Semper Fi, aim high.
It is true. There are huge problems with this left-right paradigm. There's a huge problem with having truth decay and a truth deficit in our society. I would agree with all of that. What I disagree with is the means by which they're trying to resolve that problem, saying let's drop Fox News and let's keep everything else we have in the landscape because it supports our narrative. That does not restore truth to anything.
And House Dems are coming under fire for sending a letter to several cable, satellite, and streaming service companies that is kind of tantamount to congressional pressure to drop conservative-leaning outlets such as Fox News, One America, and Newsmax. Now, this as the House Energy and Commerce Subcommittee held a hearing on disinformation in media. Joining us to discuss today, our panel, syndicated columnist and writer Ruben Navarrete is here, investigative journalist and co-host of Boom Bust, Ben Swann, also here to weigh in. So, Ben, let me start with you on the House Subcommittee hearing. What went down yesterday, and what was the purpose of this hearing?
Yeah, this whole thing is so bizarre and unnerving to think that this is happening. But essentially, you have two Democratic House lawmakers who are writing letters, as you mentioned. They've written letters to cable companies as well as streaming providers, Amazon and Apple. They've written to cable carriers like Comcast and Verizon, essentially saying, why are you allowing there to be misinformation on your networks, and what are you going to do about it? These are the words they use. Moral and ethical steps are you taking to determine what is on your airwaves and what you're allowing across your platforms. That was the letter that was sent. Now, that sends a chilling effect because, first of all, it does become government pressure, which the First Amendment obviously rebuts from the very first words. Congress shall make no laws. But having said that, the subcommittee hearing was kind of insane to have also because they're talking specifically about three networks, as you mentioned. They're talking about Fox News, they're talking about Newsmax TV, and they're talking about One America News. And in the course of these so-called subcommittee hearings, they didn't have one single representative from any of those companies actually come and testify in front of Congress. Instead, they talked to different journalists. People like Soledad O'Brien was there to talk about truth decay and why she believes that there is enormous problems here. Now, let's be honest. There are enormous problems with the way that media is consumed and disseminated in this country. That is true. But it is not Congress's place to do something about it because that oversteps the First Amendment, and Congress has no business being involved in this.
Yeah, now, Ruben, doesn't that look kind of bad on those House Democrats, given all the social media censorship that we have witnessed in this last election cycle? Like the Dems want more restrictions on the First Amendment.
Right. Right. Manila, great to be with you again. I agree with a lot of what Ben just said, all of what Ben just said. In fact, I'd add to it, though, and say that, this sounds like a weird dynamic because I thought the Democrats were against bullying. Now they're trying to bully these cable companies to get their way by banning content they don't agree with. They also are the party that famously is for smaller government when it comes to things like abortion or same-sex marriage, but now all of a sudden it wants an enormous government to go off and censor content because, well, it's in charge of government now. But where I might push back a little bit against Ben is this is not exclusive to the Democratic Party. This is politics. 2 days ago, or relatively speaking, before the last election, when Republicans controlled the Senate, they brought liberal tech companies before them and went through a whole battery of examination there. This is the way politics work. I've been covering politics long enough to see Republicans go after rap lyrics, music companies, Hollywood, tech companies, you name it. Both parties do this.
Well, now, Ben, I mean, what do you make of this letter that was sent to those satellite providers? I mean, is there any chance that these companies, I mean, maybe put on your boom bust hat for this, any chance these companies would comply? And if they did, what would that do to the news landscape?
Yeah, and by the way, totally agree. Yes, both Republicans and Democrats do this. Anybody who has power does this, and that's why the Constitution is written in the way that it is, to stop people from abusing power. Look, is there a chance that companies will go along with this? Actually, there is a chance they will. Listen, I would have said a year ago or 2 years ago, no way. There's no way Comcast would actually remove, OAN and Newsmax and Fox News. Today, I'd say at 50-50. Really,
Wow.
it's that strong because who knows? I mean, the reality is we have seen tech companies take enormous steps in terms of canceling people. And it's not just tech companies in terms of social media companies. We've seen newsletter companies cancel customers who they say, we don't like the newsletters that you send out, so you're not allowed to use this anymore. Domain service providers cutting off certain groups, including groups like Tea Party groups. So the problem is this, and this is where it really is a severe problem. The idea is who determines what is misinformation and disinformation. These words are such dangerous words to use because they're completely relative. I mean, Soledad O'Brien is the star witness at this House subcommittee hearing, basically talking about disinformation and misinformation. She's also someone who on Twitter, because she's very active on Twitter, heavily condemned the Covington Catholic schoolboys, saying that they were guilty and they shouldn't even be allowed to be interviewed on morning shows unless they apologize for what they had done. Soledad O'Brien obviously either was ignorant of the full capacity of what happened there or just chose to still take a stand. And the bottom line is that this is not a place for Congress. And I agree also with what Ruben's saying. It's not a place for Congress to try to set up rules to demand that social media companies try to make things more fair. They're private companies. What we need to make sure, though, is that you don't have collusion between those companies stopping competitors from coming along, because Congress does have a role in stopping that through the Interstate Commerce Clause.
Merci d'avoir regardé la vidéo. Si vous l'avez aimé, mettez un pouce. Et si vous voulez faire partie de la famille cosmique, abonnez-vous. Si vous désirez nous soutenir pour notre travail, vous pouvez trouver le lien Tipeee en description. Merci, à bientôt. Bisous.